friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
After they had sinned, they were given bodies of flesh. For an angel who spends 7 days on earth becomes opaque and substantial. And when they had been clothed with flesh and with a corrupt nature, they sought to regain their former place, but could not, and were cast out into the mountains, there to dwell. And from these angels descend the sons of the giants and the Anakim, and from their seed also spring the devils. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I'm honored to have all of you join us in live broadcasts, and I'm especially honored to have as guest with me Rob Skiba. Rob, are you there, brother?
I am. How you doing, Zen?
Pretty good, brother. And how about yourself? You had
Pretty good. Survived another Xmas
yeah, right.
day of battling on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm sure. We did cover it last week about the pagan origins of it, and it's kind of funny to think that everybody has these giant phallic symbols all in their living rooms, and they're gathered around, with their families and presents all under the trees, and it just shows the insanity of idolatry and how steeped into it mainstream Christianity is without any realization. But it is what it is.
Yeah, that's the thing that frustrates me the most is that, look, we may have done things in ignorance before, and I don't believe we're held accountable for what we don't know.
Right.
But now we're without excuse. I mean, come on. Like, there is so much information readily available that anybody can see for themselves. And when you have pastors even saying that they know this has nothing to do with Yeshua and that it is based on pagan rituals and things of that nature, and then the inevitable word "but" follows,
Right.
they proceed to explain why we do it anyway. I'm like, guys, I mean, we have holy days in the scriptures
Yes.
that God gave us to celebrate. And it's like, what is the problem here? Why can't we give up 2 beast feasts in favor of the 7 Moedim plus the Sabbath? So you trade 2, you get 8.
Right.
That's a good deal.
I agree.
And I posted, I posted a bunch of stuff in the last couple of days. People try to use Colossians, that all that, the feast of, they said the feast of the Jews. First of all, it says the feast of Yod He Vav He. These are the feast of the Lord.
Right.
In the King James. And they said, well, that's just a shadow. I'm like, well, but a shadow proceeds from and points to the source that's casting the shadow.
Yes.
So if you're going to claim to follow the source, why would you want to have nothing? Why is it that you don't want to have anything to do with that which proceeds from and points back to the very source that you say you want to believe in and follow? And yet you want to go over here and follow all the things that are proceeding from and pointing to somebody other than source you claim to believe in. I really don't understand it. I mean, I understand when we were in ignorance, but we're not in ignorance anymore. So, I'm like, look, well, has Isaiah the prophet, spoken of you when he said, you hypocrites, you have exchanged the truth of God's word for your traditions.
Right.
And, man, I mean, I'm torn because I loved Christmas, loved it. I mean, that was a huge deal for me and my family. So, I get it. It's something that we don't want to let go of. But I'm like, look, unless you're a newbie to my channel or to my Facebook page, please don't wish me a Merry Christmas, okay? 'Cause I mean, I do appreciate the warm sentiment with which people give it. You know, they mean well, but now it's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. I'm like, oh. I'm trying to be polite. I'm like, hey, I appreciate it, thank you, but hey, watch this video. You know,
Right.
and I don't know if you've seen it, but 119 Ministries put out a really great video that was done by the same guy who did the Way documentary. Did you see it?
No. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's called the Christmas Question, I think is the title of it. 119 Ministries just put it out. I guess they were the producers of it or something. I don't know, but Luca Baffi, I believe that's his name, was the writer, director, producer on it. And it is outstanding. It's really, really well done. Very non-offensive. And actually, when you first start watching it, it sounds like they're endorsing Christmas because they give a fair share to both sides of the story. And they really, part of me wishes that they were a little more forceful at the end of it. Just like, but I think they were wise in making it more subtle, and they really leave it in the audience's hands. Okay, you got a decision to make. You'll have one side saying, "Oh, it's the greatest thing ever," and yeah, we Christianized paganism, and that's a good thing. And then right after that, you'll have people saying, "Well, in Exodus 32, they had this thing, the golden calf, and their heart was to serve Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh." It says tomorrow we will have a feast to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and they were using this golden calf thing as their means of worshiping the God that they said took us out of Egypt, that they acknowledge as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So their heart was to worship Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, but to do it in a way contrary to what he deems acceptable.
Right.
And what was his reaction? 3,000 dead.
Right.
Thank God for grace. He's not wiping out people anymore. But
right, and Moshe, because he was ready to go further.
Yeah. Especially if you consider this as a marriage relationship.
Right.
What married couple out there would knowingly, willingly, intentionally celebrate their spouse's birthday on the day of their ex-boyfriend or girlfriend? My heart, honey, I'm really trying to worship you, but I'm not worship you, but I'm really trying to celebrate your birthday, but I'm doing it on, my ex-girlfriend's day.
Don't take offense.
Yeah. Don't be offended.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just glad it's over.
Yeah. And even with, all the commercialization and just the insanity from from Thanksgiving till, really the end of Christmas. It's just, I don't even want to be out there on the roads or in the insanity of all the, just going anywhere. It's just crazy. The roads are crazy. People are crazy. All the shopping is just insane.
Yeah. People going into debt.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it is, it is a relief not having to go out there and look, if you want to give presents to your friends and family, that's great, but don't pretend you're doing it on a day that you claim to be honoring the birth of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And we're blessed to get the day off from people, people who have jobs, they typically will get the day off. That's awesome. Have time with your friends and family. Why not? I mean, in some cases, it's a paid vacation. So that's great.
Right. Yeah.
And people have asked me, well, what about Hanukkah? And my position on it is, look, it's not a Moedim, it's not a God-prescribed holiday. However, I think it's a good one because the whole theme of Hanukkah, the way it started, was a rejection of paganism.
Yes.
Incidentally, on December 25th.
Right.
Where people said, what, our temple has been polluted, and they wiped everything out, cleaned that place out, and rededicated the temple back to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and said, we're going to clean ourselves up and get back on track. Right. And I'm going, what a coincidence that these 2 days are parallel.
Yes, right.
You have something that's absolutely pagan that people try to slap the holy onto the profane, and then you have a holiday, while it's not, commanded in Scripture, I believe Yeshua attended it. the Festival of Lights, and that, it's a good thing. If you're going to do something on December 25th, you got the day off, you want to spend time with friends and family, great. Commit yourself to rejecting paganism and getting back on God's page and welcoming him into your temple. I think it's
exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. Anything else that you wanted to bring forth on this, or anything else that you covered in Facebook?
Yeah. No. Well, actually, let me pull something up. I am simulcasting this on YouTube, by the way, if you wanted to mirror it later. I don't know if you guys are doing it too. But,
yeah, my son is.
Is he? Cool. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. I'm not able to do a screen share for some reason. Huh. That could be problematic going into the Book of Enoch. Well, maybe I'll try to figure it out during the break. But anyway, I was just going to say I've been posting a bunch of stuff on the behind the scenes from Seed.
Yeah, I saw some of that.
Yeah, thank you. Just super excited about all that. Again, I want to express my sincere gratitude, appreciation to everybody out there who made it possible. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for your support. If anybody is interested in continuing to support it, there's still a few days left in this year. If you're looking for a tax write-off, you can go to theseries.com with no D. I have seedtheseries.com and see the series, SEE. Seetheseries.com. Scroll down that page. You'll see 4 options that will allow you to contribute toward the project if you're interested. And if you want a tax write-off, that's option number 4. So I wanted to get that out. We got a few days left. So if people are looking for a tax deduction and you believe in the project, if you don't believe in the project, that's great. I understand. No problem. But if you do and you want to contribute, it's a good way to get a tax write-off at the end of the year here.
Yeah, and it's a win-win. You can't beat that, being able to help somebody and also being able to write it off on your taxes as well. I mean,
why not, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a blessing. A blessing both ways.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with the
screen share
function here, but I actually have both the Charles and the Lawrence up on my computer this time. So if we do like we did last time, I can read Lawrence, I guess. And
I've got the Charles pulled up for me.
Okay, so if I can figure it out when you're on, I'll put the Charles version on the screen for people to follow along as well if they would like to. I don't remember.
That's a good idea.
Do you remember where we left off? Chapter 7, I think, or something.
Yeah, I think we made it to 8.
Did we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Yeah, on the R.H. Charles, we made it to read through 7. So, yeah, we're on chapter
8. Chapter 8 starts with Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields.
Yes.
And so, what is that here? It must be like.
Well, actually, we may have, because we talked about the antimony.
Well,
so I think we read through this chapter.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
On the basically the art of war was taught by Azazel. Always found that interesting that Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working with them. Which is why in my seed story, when my special forces troops encounter him in the cave of Dudiel, which we haven't got to yet in the Book of Enoch, where he's banished, he makes a comment. He's got these special forces guys around him with machine guns pointed at him, and he's like, "Are those weapons you're pointing at me?" And Lieutenant Randall, Zach, he's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Impressive, well done." Like I'm indicating, like he's like, you've made good use of the Earth's metals,
right.
That we wouldn't have war, at least not in that fashion anyway. I guess you can make an argument that Cain started a war with a stone, cracking it over his brother's head.
Right.
But, the art of actually making weapons of war, specifically designed for warfare.
It's like magic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so that was the only other observation that I had on that.
Yeah. And if you really think about it, I mean, those that had, the secret for creating metal that was harder than any others, and going to war, and their weapons would shatter
Yeah.
the other people's. I mean, that was like domination, like having gunpowder. The Chinese having gunpowder during that time.
Oh yeah, that made a huge difference. Fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you could slaughter, and so yeah, and then we see just in the genealogies again in Genesis 4, where the children of Cain are listed, that Tubal-Cain is the artificer of the metals, and so the secrets were contrived and given to that particular bloodline, and they were warring against even the children of Adam. So
Yeah. All right. You want me to start off
you go ahead.
chapter 9 here?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I apologize, guys. I can't show it on the screen, but you could probably just do a Google search for Book of Enoch, and the first link I think is for sacred text, sacred-text.com. We'll take you there if you wanted to follow along. Actually, it looks like the Lawrence is on the same chapter page as Charles, at least in this version of it, because chapter 8 synced up with the Azazel story. And okay, so I'll just start off with chapter 9 then. Then Michael and Gabriel and Raphael and Suriel and Uriel, who I believe are the four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, Revelation talks about, looked down from heaven and saw the quantity of blood which was shed on earth and all the iniquity which was upon it, and said one to another, it is the voice of their cries. The earth, deprived of her children, has cried even to the gate of heaven. And now to you, O ye holy ones of heaven, the souls of men complain, saying, obtain justice for us with the Most High. Then they said to their Lord, the King, thou art Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings. The throne of thy glory is forever and ever is thy name sanctified and glorified. Thou art blessed and glorified. Thou hast made all things. Thou possessed power over all things, and all things are open and manifest before thee. Thou beholdest all things, and nothing can be concealed from thee. Thou hast seen what Azazel has done, how he has taught every species of iniquity upon earth, taught every species of iniquity upon earth, and has disclosed to the world all the secret things which are done in the heavens. Simyaza also has taught sorcery, to whom thou hast given authority over those who are associated with him. They have gone together to the daughters of men, have laid with them, they have polluted, and have discovered crimes to them. The women likewise have brought forth giants. Thus has the whole earth been filled with blood and with iniquity. And now, behold, the souls of those who are dead cry out, and complain even to the gate of heaven. Their groaning ascends, nor can they escape from the unrighteousness which is committed on earth. Thou knowest all things before they exist. Thou knowest these things, and what has been done by them, yet thou dost not speak to us. What on account of these things ought we to do to them? So the angels are crying out. They're like, look, man, look what's going on down there. What do you want us to do?
Right.
Interesting, the blood crying out there. That's reminiscent of the blood of Abel crying up from the ground.
Right, and then the earth laid accusations against him as well. So that's why I believe that, because of the blood crying out and also the earth, the archangels go down and check it all out and report back to the Most High. And so in the R.H. Charles edition, and just for people that are looking for both, there's a website, reluctantmessenger.com, that has both of the Book of Enoch's and the R.H. Charles and the Richard Lawrence edition easily available. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said one to another, the earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their cryings up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men, make their suit saying, bring our cause before the Most High. And they said to the Lord of the ages, Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings, and God of the ages, the throne of thy glory standeth unto all the generations of the ages, and thy name holy and glorious and blessed unto all the ages. Thou hast made all things, and power over all things hast thou, and all things are naked and open in thy sight. And thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. Thou seest what Azazel hath done, who hath taught all unrighteousness on earth, and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven, which men were striving to learn. And Semyaza, to whom thou hast given authority to bear rule over his associates, and they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins. And the women themselves have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And now, behold, the souls of those who have died are crying and making their suit to the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended, and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth. And thou knowest all things before they come to pass, and thou seest these things, and thou dost suffer them, and thou dost not say to us what we are to do to them in regard to these. Any comment before moving on? We got just like 5 minutes.
5 minutes before we go to break.
Mhm.
No, not really. I mean, it's basically the archangels saying, "Hey, what are we going to do about this?" That's what it looks like to me.
Mhm.
They identified the four archangels as Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel. Those are the four that I believe are standing on the four corners of the earth. Four corners, kind of hard on a globe.
Right.
Because see, that's the problem. Because you go to pretty much any creation ministry, and they'll say, "Well, that's what it's talking about. The four cardinal points, north, south, east, and west." I'm like, okay, if you're going to say it's north, south, east, and west, where are the angels standing? Where is the east corner?
Right.
Where is the west corner?
Where's the corner? Period.
Well, where's the corner? Period.
Yeah.
But you can identify a geographic location for north and south. You cannot identify a geographic location for east and west. And yet we have in scripture a testimony of four angels standing on four geographic locations,
Right.
identified as the four corners. So the argument that we're talking about north, south, east, and west doesn't work, in my opinion. Where's, other than the military academy, where's the West Point? Where's the east? Where's the corners? Where are these dudes standing?
Right. And with regard to that, I believe that the circle was inscribed upon a square, and that's why we have this mention. And then also that the symbolism for the square and the compass is connected to that as well.
It is. In fact, in Albert Pike's book, where he addresses the various levels of Freemasonry, and in the apprentice level, he tells you point blank that the iconography, like on their apron and some of the other things that they have, there's this arch overhead that represents the firmament. It represents a structure, an object to which their mind is to be, pointed, is directed toward this object. And it tells you point blank that the square and compass has to do with the plane of the earth. Even right out it says, which the ancients considered to be a plane. So yeah, square and compass. I did publish it. It was part of a video I started working on and never finished. But I was doing like a biblical cosmology for dummies, video
Right on.
where I just took a piece of clay and I did it like in fast, I sped up the video so it's all real fast, but like I formed a perfect square block out of clay, and then I took a physical compass and I inscribed a circle into it, and I put a little smiley face on it into the face of the deep. I said, here's a square, it's the face of the deep, put a compass on it, and I carved out a circle because it says that it was inscribed.
Right.
The circle was inscribed. Again, how do you inscribe a ball into space, right?
Right.
But I was just trying to visually depict it as simple as I possibly could, using clay. I mean, it's the only thing it's the only way the language makes any sense, frankly.
Yeah, and then especially when you consider that the way that it was pressed as a seal.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Right. All right, we're 30 seconds out from break, everyone. So we will be back and we'll go into all of this, but I'll make mention that the Book of Giants also fits into the timeline where we are in this narrative, and so we'll make mention of that as well. So, but anyways, we'll be right back, everyone, for second portion.
In the second book of the Great Commission series, we provide other manuscripts which have been part of that collection which has forever been lost, forgotten, and forbidden to public consideration. And specifically, we provide within this manuscript the Gospels of both Nicodemus and Bartholomew, which describe in greater detail Christ's descent down into Sheol and his fulfillment of the promise to free Adam and his descendants from the bondage of hell. And there are other texts also included in this collection which complete the book of Acts in a manner that you cannot find anywhere else. And so the first two books of the Great Commission are focused on the Acts and the Apostles, the Acts and the Gospels of the Apostles. And the third book, which we will share with you later, is on the end time apocalypses. Hope you enjoy.
If ancient illustrations of faith which both testify to God's grace and tend to man's edification are collected in writing, so that by the perusal of them, as if by the reproduction of the facts, as well God may be honored, as man may be strengthened, why should not new instances also be collected that shall be equally suitable for both purposes, if only on the ground that these modern examples will one day become ancient and available for posterity, although in their present time they are esteemed of less authority. And we therefore, what have we heard and handled, declare also to you, brethren and little children, that as well you who were concerned in these matters may be reminded of them again, to the glory of the Lord, that you who know them by report may have communion with the blessed martyrs, and through them with the Lord Jesus Christ, to whom be glory and honor forever and ever. Amen. While, says she, we were still with the persecutors, and my father, for the sake of his affection for me, was persisting in seeking to turn me away and to cast me down from the faith. Father, said I, do you see, let us say, this vessel lying here to be a little pitcher or something else? And he said, I see it to be so. And I replied to him, can it be called by any other name than what it is? And he said, no, neither can I call myself anything else than what I am, a Christian. After a few days, we were taken into the dungeon, and I was very much afraid because I had never felt such darkness. Oh, terrible day! Oh, the fierce heat of the shock of the soldiery! Because of the crowds, and the dungeon became to me, as it were, a palace, so that I preferred being there to being elsewhere. I saw a golden ladder of marvelous height, reaching up even to heaven, and very narrow, so that persons could only ascend it one by one. And under the ladder itself was crouching a dragon of wonderful size, who lay in wait for those who ascended. I said, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, he shall not hurt me. I went up, and I saw an immense extent of garden, and in the midst of the garden a white-haired man sitting in the dress of a shepherd of large stature, milking sheep, and standing around were many thousand white-robed ones. And he raised his head and looked upon me and said to me, Thou art welcome, daughter. And at the sound of their voices I was awakened, and I immediately related this to my brother, and we understood that it was to be a passion. And we ceased henceforth to have any hope in this world. The procurator then delivers judgment on all of us and condemns us to the wild beasts. And we went down cheerfully to the dungeon. And being set free, we at length saw the first boundless light. This is what the Lord promised to us. We have received the promise. Moreover, there in the pleasure garden 4 other angels appeared, brighter than the previous ones, who, when they saw us, gave us honor and said to the rest of the angels, Here they are, with admiration. And the angel said to us, Come first, enter and greet your Lord. And in the midst of that place we saw it as were a hoary man sitting, having snow-white hair, and with a youthful countenance, and his feet we saw not. And on his right hand and on his left were 24 elders, and behind them a great many others were standing. We entered with great wonder, and stood before the throne, and the 4 angels raised us up, and we kissed him, and he passed his hand over our face. And the rest of the elders said to us, Let us stand. And we stood and made peace. And the elders said to us, Enjoy. And I said, Perpetua, you have what you wish. And she said to me, Thanks be to God that joyous as I was in the flesh, I am now more joyous here.
They are going to be judged, and that is part of the judgment of the flood and the narrative of the flood. And in the second book of Baruch, it makes mention specifically of 409,000 giants being killed from the flood of Noah's day. And so, and we'll be getting to that in the story here shortly. So, Rob.
Cool. All right, let me get back on here. So we are on chapter 10?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out the screen share thing. I have no idea. There's no reason for it to be doing what it's doing, so I apologize. So I just went ahead and deactivated my camera too, so it's just both of our faces switching back and forth.
Right on.
All right, so chapter 10. Then the Most High, the Great and Holy One, spoke and sent... Oh boy, let's see. Arsayal, yeah. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. It's Arsayallallyur. Sent that guy, that angel, to the son of Lamech, saying, Say to him in my name, conceal thyself. Then explain to him the consummation which is about to take place, for all the earth shall perish. The waters of a deluge shall come upon the whole earth, and all things which are in it shall be destroyed. And now teach him how he may escape, and how his seed may remain in all the earth. In all the earth. Again, the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, cast him into darkness, and opening the desert which is in Dudael, cast him in there. Throw upon him, hurl the appointed stones, covering him with darkness. There shall he remain forever, cover his face, that he may not see the light. And in the great day of judgment, let him be cast into the fire. Restore the earth, which the angels have corrupted, and announce life to it, that I may revive it. All the sons of men shall not perish in consequence of every secret, but which the watchers have destroyed, and which they have taught their offspring. All the earth has been corrupted by the effects of the teaching of Azazel. Therefore, to him ascribe the whole crime. To Gabriel Also, the Lord said, go to the biters and to the reprobates, to the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication, the offspring of the watchers, from among men. Bring them forth and exile them one against another. Let them perish by mutual slaughter, for length of days shall not be theirs. They shall all entreat thee, but their fathers shall not obtain their wishes respecting them, for they shall hope for eternal life, and that they may live, each of them, 500 years. To Michael, likewise, the Lord said, go and announce his crime to Semyaza and to the others who are with him, who have been associated with women, that they might be polluted with all their impurity. And when all their sons shall be slain, when they shall see the perdition of their beloved, bind them for 70 generations under the earth, even to the day of judgment and of consummation, until the judgment, the effect of which will last forever, be completed. Then shall they be taken away into the lowest depths of the fire in torments, and in confinement shall they be shut up forever. Immediately after this shall he, together with them, burn and perish. They shall be bound until the consummation of many generations. Destroy all the souls addicted to dalliance and the offspring of the watchers, for they have tyrannized over mankind. Let every oppressor perish from the face of the earth. Let every evil work be destroyed. The plant of righteousness and of rectitude appear, and its produce become a blessing. Righteousness and rectitude shall be forever planted with delight. And then shall all the saints give thanks and live until they have begotten 1,000 children, while the whole period of their youth and their Sabbath shall be completed in peace. And those days all the earth shall be cultivated in righteousness. It shall be wholly planted with trees and filled with benediction. Every tree of delight shall be planted in it. In it shall vines be planted, and the vine which shall be planted in it shall yield fruit to satisfy. Every seed which shall be sown in it shall produce for 1 measure 1,000, and 1 measure of olives shall produce 10 presses of oil. Purify the earth from all oppression, from all injustice, from all crime, from all impiety, and from all the pollution which is committed upon it. Exterminate them from the earth. Then shall all the children of men be righteous, and all nations shall pay me divine honors and bless me, and all shall adore me. The earth shall be cleansed from all corruption, from every crime, from all punishment, and from all suffering. Neither will I again send a deluge upon it from generation to generation forever. In those days I will open the treasures of blessing which are in heaven, that I may cause them to descend upon earth and upon all works and labor of men. Peace and equity shall associate with the sons of men all the days of the world, in every generation of it.
Before I read this, I wanted to ask you really quickly what you thought about the lost book of King Og of Bashan.
Well, I thought it was a fascinating read. First of all, it really was. I struggle with it. The idea that he was a pre-flood giant that somehow made it through the flood has a lot of problems, at least for me. His age.
As far as you're meaning Nimrod or Og?
Well, either one. If we're talking about the same characters that show up in the Book of Genesis. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't be talking about characters with the same name. It's not like there's only one Rob in the whole world and one Zen, one Fred or Frank or anything else. So I think sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking, Abraham, he's the only guy on the whole earth named Abraham, or whatever. There may have been multiple people that had similar names or the same name. So if that's be the case, then I could see the Nimrod that we encounter in Genesis 10 and 11. It could be a title.
Right. That's what I feel like.
Og. Let me see if I can look that up real quick. I've got the Dictionary of Scripture Proper Names by J.B. Jackson. A fantastic resource. People want to pick it up. It gives you all the names of the Bible and the meaning of the names. Let me see if I can find Og. What does his name mean? Og. That's weird. Hearth cake. That doesn't help. His name means hearth cake. Okay, I have no idea what to make of that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a fascinating read, that book, and certainly makes for great story material. I don't quite know what to make of it. I mean, there is a Jewish legend, tradition, or whatever. I would say Jewish fairy tale.
Right.
Og was hanging on to the ark for a year, and Noah's feeding him through the window.
Right.
And
Surfing. Right.
yeah, he's surfing the ark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't buy it. For me, that's like Jack and the Beanstalk for Jews. I don't know what to make of that. But I mean, like anything else, you chew the meat, toss the bones, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I will. With regard to Og, it does mention that in the Targum and the Perkei Rabbi Eleazar, but again,
I think Legends of the Jews, I think, mentions it too.
Yeah. But again, it's something that we don't find scripturally mentioned in the canon in any great regard. It does say that he was the last remnant giant, and it seems plausible somehow that maybe he survived the flood, and certainly there's insinuations the other way. But with regard to the lost book of King Og of Bashan, for those that haven't read it, it's a fascinating tale, and I'm in no way saying that it was inspired or that it came from some source that can be trusted, but it is interesting in that it brings a Lord of the Rings type feel. There's like 100,000 giant war leading up to the the flood, as the waters are gathering and they're having to run to the mountains as the same time. And we see it here in the Book of Enoch that the angels went and brought them against each other in order to eradicate them and to destroy them, and that whole war plays out in that particular text. And it's fascinating the way that the magic and the things that they're involved in, the worship of the different Baals and the different elements, and how they're given over to possession. And then there's different magics involved in like invisibility and all kind of strange things, conjuring antediluvian creatures. They're riding upon what seem to be some kind of dinosaur behemoth type creatures as well that are involved in those particular wars. So it is a fascinating read, and it's one that's really short. So
yeah, it's really short. I mean, the other problem with it is it's fragmented.
Right.
So you're getting like every other word, every other sentence. It's all choppy because I guess whatever manuscripts that were incomplete.
Right.
So, people are doing the best they can. So there's a lot of dot.
Yes.
In parentheses and partial words and partial sentences throughout it. So it's not an easy read in terms of just casual reading sentences or stuff like that. It's kind of choppy. Rapha, though, that's an interesting word, the Raphaim, because it says Og of Bashan was of the remnant of the Raphaim.
Right.
And Rapha, I mean, we have various titles for God, Jehovah Rapha being one of them, God my healer, or Yahuwah, Jehovah my healer. Because Rapha means to heal or be healed or whatnot. So there's something weird about that. The Raphaim are historically recognized to be giants, and he's of the remnant of the Raphaim, but it's of the healed ones. At least that's the way it appears when you look up the word. So, I've always been fascinated by that. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, have you into that at all?
I really would not know, because I don't see any account that would bring that connection. As far as the giants being healed, and if it was done by the Mustang.
I want to say it was either Steve Quayle or Tom Horn had said something about it also being associated with resurrection. And so, if that's the case, then of the remnant of the resurrected. So could it be that through something the giants were resurrected? Whether that be through genetic engineering with the tablets that Canaan found, that we talked about. Was it the son of Arphaxad, I think? In Jubilees, he found writings of the Watchers, and he hid it from Noah and sinned because of it. Right. And that's all you get. Like, you get nothing else.
Yeah, followed it.
And what I pointed out when I looked at that, I'm like, well, that would make he'd be first cousins with Nimrod. And, the text says that Nimrod began to be or to become a giant.
Right.
In the Septuagint. Yeah, in the Septuagint. And that's interesting, too, because the word Gibborim, or Gabor, it means mighty one, mighty man, like a strong, powerful, valiant warrior. And the same word is used for David's mighty men, who were not Nephilim. They were busy killing Nephilim. Right. So in the Hebrew, it's a little ambiguous. You're like, well, what's going on here? But when they chose to translate the Hebrew into Greek, they chose very different and very specific words. And so, like with David's mighty man, the Gabor, Gabborim, it was translated as tone dynatone, like dynatone from, like, I think it's the same root we get like dynamite. So, David's mighty men, the same Hebrew word was translated with a Greek word that means strong, powerful, explosive, that kind of thing. But they took the same exact Hebrew word when it came to Nimrod, and it said he began to become a gigantus or giganus or giant. So, like, they knew the difference historically speaking, contextually speaking. They knew how to take the same exact Hebrew word and translate it two different ways into Greek, based on the understanding. So my thing is, I'm taking total creative license here. This is not anything I read anywhere, but it seems to make sense to me, at least from a plot perspective, that if he's first cousins, because you have Ham, Cush, Nimrod, and you have Shem, Arphaxad, Canaan, like they're first cousins. And meanwhile, you got other cousin Canaan over here, growing 30 feet tall. So you could kind of see, you know how families are and rivalry and stuff like that. What if, just pure speculation, but what if, cousins Canaan and Nimrod are looking over at cousin Canaan, and they're going, dude, man, what if we could become the Hulk?
Right, yeah. What'd you do?
Yeah, they start.
Give us some of that.
Yeah, and the word, it says began in the King James, but I forget. I think it's chalal or something like that. But it means that same word is translated elsewhere as to profane, prostitution. It has a strong sexual connotation to it. So when you look at that, from the Hebrew definitions, it looks like through some sort of sexual defilement, Nimrod did something to himself that changed him such that he became something he wasn't before, and that being a giant. So whereas Canaan and his offspring appear to be born and they just grow into giants, Nimrod's more like Bruce Banner. He did something to himself that altered himself, and now Bruce becomes the Hulk. Nimrod became a giant. So could it be that the Raphaim are maybe the product of the same thing? Because it seems to me there's a differentiation between the Canaanites and the Raphaim, even though the words are sometimes interchangeable.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that, as far as Og, that he was involved with the Canaanites and the Hamites, and that, Goliath and all that came about somehow from that as well.
Well, yeah. Og, or at least Sihon, I think both Og and Sihon were Amorites.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. And so the Amorites come from Canaan. So
yes.
Who appears to be a genetic giant. So, I don't know. I don't know what to make. I mean, the Philistines, on the other hand, they come from Caphtor, who was from Mitzrayim. And the interesting thing about that is the Caphtorites, they settled the island of Crete, and all of Greek mythology originates on Crete.
Right there, yeah.
So
and a lot of interesting structures also.
Oh yeah, lot of stuff going on there. And
Yeah.
Dr. Ken Johnson, in his book Ancient Post-Flood History, does a really good job of chronicling who went where and when, and became who, whatever. It's fascinating when you start plugging in. Again, the understanding of Genesis chapter 6 becomes, as Steve Quayle says, the Rosetta Stone for understanding the whole of Scripture and history. Like, if you don't get what's going on in Genesis 6, you are missing a huge piece of the story.
Yeah, huge. Absolutely. I would say also that we have this book that is put out by Berosus, and it's one of the last of the few that survived of his writings. It's called The Travels of Noah into Europe, and then it talks about the different civilizations and cultures that came about after the flood from his particular children. And it's a fascinating read, and it dates back to like the 1600s. So it's a very old text. I don't if I haven't sent you one, I'll send it out to you. So
I'm literally looking over my shoulder now at the Zen collection.
Yeah, right.
A whole bookshelf.
It's a real thin book. But let me know, and then I'll get it out to you, because it's a fascinating read, and you like tracing the origins of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think you would be interested in it.
That's fascinating, man. Did you want to read the Charles version?
Yeah, okay. I'll go ahead and read this before break. All right. Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spake and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah and tell him, in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is on it. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all the generations of the world. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert which is in Dudael, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire, and heal the earth which the angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. And to Gabriel said the Lord, Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication, and the children of the watchers from amongst men, and cause them to go forth. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. For length of days shall they not have, and no request that they, their fathers, make of thee shall be granted unto their fathers on their behalf. For they hope to live an eternal life, and that each one of them will live 500 years. And the Lord said unto Michael, Go bind Semyaza and his associates, who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whosoever shall be condemned and destroyed will from thenceforth be bound together with them to the end of all generations, and destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers because they have wronged mankind. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end, and let the plant of righteousness and truth appear, and it shall prove a blessing. The works of righteousness and truth shall be planted in truth and joy forevermore. And then shall all the righteous escape, and shall live till they beget thousands of children. And all the days of their youth and their old age shall they complete in peace. And then shall the whole earth be filled in righteousness, and shall all be planted with trees, and be full of blessing. And all desirable trees shall be planted on it, and they shall plant vines on it, and the vine which they plant thereon shall yield wine in abundance. And as for all the seed which is sown thereon, each measure of it shall bear 1,000, and each measure of olive shall yield 10 presses of oil. And cleanse thou the earth from all oppression, and from all unrighteousness, and from all sin, and from all godlessness, and all the uncleanness that is wrought upon the earth. Destroy from off the earth, and all the children of men shall become righteous, and all nations shall offer adoration and shall praise me, and all shall worship me, and the earth shall be cleansed from all defilement. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for a second hour.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
And the angel said, rightly you ask, when God caused the flood over the earth and destroyed all flesh and 409,000 giants, and the water rose over the heights 15 cubits. The water entered paradise and killed every flower, but it removed the sprig of the vine completely and brought it outside. Baruch 4, the Greek version. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. We are into the second hour where we're doing a chapter by chapter, verse by verse study of the Book of Enoch. And specifically, we are speaking about the corruption, the interdiction of the Watchers into the affairs of humanity and how that created the men of renown, and how that led to the miscegenation, as it says in the Book of Giants, the corruption of the genetics, the DNA, and what we saw as far as the bringing forth of hybrids, the involvement of Enosh, and the idolatry, and how all that came to be a corruption here on the earth. And so the Most High brought an end to it and started anew with Noah being pure in his generations, meaning I believe that he was untouched and uncorrupted by the Nephilim genetics, and that everything was started anew so that Noah wouldn't have to worry about being eaten by giants or having to war with them, that his family and he could come up in relative peace, and that they could go forth and multiply and replenish and be fruitful after the flood. And so, and I was almost done. I was like two sentences. Yeah. So yeah. So we'll just go on to chapter 11. And any comment from you? And
yeah. I want to camp out here for a little bit. There's a lot to talk about here. Before I do that, though, I want to make sure I answer a question in the chat room. Our friend Chad asked, he said, I need a question answered badly. 2 weeks ago, y'all did a show on Genesis and Enoch. At about 106, Zen was reading about a higher law. What was he reading? I don't know if you remember that or not.
106 and a higher law. I'm not sure. I would have to look at that particular. If you'd like to contact me, you can do it zengarcia2010@gmail.com and just ask me and let me know the specific timestamp on the video you're asking about, and certainly I could revisit it and give you greater clarity as far as your answer. But as far as right now, I can't pull anything from just that. It's too ambiguous.
Yeah, he says 106. I'm assuming that's probably 1 hour and 6 minutes, because in the first minute or so, we were probably just talking, chit chat.
Yeah, we cover so much, though. I mean, it's hard for me to even know. And I read so many different quotes, but
you don't have them all memorized, like which one is which? Come on, man.
And all the shows, right?
Yeah, all the shows.
Yeah.
What? On the show you did 4 months ago at 3 minutes and 12 seconds.
Right, exactly, yeah. And we're already, 20 hours into this study?
Something like that, yeah. So you're saying Baruch mentions 409,000 giants perished?
Yes, yeah, specifically. And in the Slavonic translation in Baruch, the third book of Baruch, it says kind of similar, except for, I'll read it too. The numbers just a little bit different. It says, and the angel said to me, rightly you asked me, when God made the flood upon the earth, he drowned every firstling, and he destroyed 104,000 giants. And the water rose above the mountains, 20 cubits above the mountains, and the water entered into the garden, bringing out one shoot from the vine, as God withdrew the waters. That's Baruch, the third, Baruch,
Entered,
book 3.
entered the garden and brought out one shoot from the vine. I wonder what that's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's speaking about the vine, because it then later in the story, Noah, he recognized it. He says in the story that, and this is also in the Genesis Apocryphon that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. He mentions recognizing it as the vine by which Adam and Eve fall, and then he asked God if it's okay for him to plant it, because he's going around after the flood and planting all the plants back into the ground and restoring them. And God tells him that whereas it was a curse, that it will also be a curse and a blessing, and that, and because he'll be able to make it's the grapevine, and so he makes the wine from it, and it is curative. But when in consuming too much of it in excess, then of course it causes you to fall and to be tempted and fall into sin. And so,
well, that's interesting. So wait, is it saying that the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a grape tree, or is this unrelated to the tree of knowledge of good and evil?
Oh no, that's the innuendo. And I think that it is mentioning that the grapevine is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that the properties of these grapes, not even making wine out of them, that they are in some way intoxicating, and even you could say hallucinogenic to some degree, because it opens the minds and the eyes of Adam and Eve, and they recognize somehow that like the angels, to understand good and evil. And then certainly they lost their bright nature. They were placed under the authority of death then, and I believe that's when the serpent beguiled Eve, and then that led to her being pregnant, and she'd have to bear children in sorrow. There's going to be enmity between the seed lines. But yeah, those again, Baruch, the third book is Slavonic, the fourth book is Greek. They're kind of the same thing, but they follow along in story with what is revealed in the Genesis Apocryphon. And so if you read that, you get an account of the flood. Noah's saved through the flood, and then after he builds an altar after disembarking, and then he goes and he plants all the different twigs and trees and things that he sees, and then the story of the vine is found within it, and he plants it, and then we know he gets drunk from the vineyard, and that's when Ham sees the nakedness of his father, which we know that is him sleeping with his mother. Yeah, and that Canaan was a result of that.
So is the belief then that the fruit, rather than being an apple, was a grape?
Yeah, it seems to imply that. Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that before. That is really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wondered, why alcohol is sometimes referred to as spirits.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it clearly does. Some people. I mean, it manifests stuff.
Yeah, it opens you up to possession.
It definitely. I'm not a drinker.
No, I'm not either.
And there's only been a very few handful of times that I've been drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people just become different personalities when they drink.
Yeah.
For me, everything just becomes funny to me. Like, I just think everything. I either get really tired and sleepy, or I just think everything's hilarious. But other people, I mean, they just get real belligerent and change into something really ugly. So yeah, it's interesting. I'd never heard of that before. I'd have to look into it because my mind starts racing with all kinds of interesting thoughts. Like for instance, the grapes in Canaan growing so big. We talked about this in the previous shows.
Right.
So big that one cluster of grapes, it took two guys with a pole to carry it. So were they genetically engineering if we were to assume that it's a tree of knowledge of good and evil, were contain grapes, what's up with that, right?
Right. And, also it says that the grapes and all the fruit in the garden in paradise is of very much larger stature and larger size, and that even the tree of life is said to bear a different fruit every month of the year, that it has special healing properties, and that the different fruits that it puts off at the different times of the year are used for different ailments and different cures. And
but we're told that it's a tree of
right.
knowledge of good and evil, and grapes are, they grow on a vine. So
right.
What do any of the texts address that, or?
No, other than, it says that, and perhaps maybe the tree was entwined with this particular fruit in some manner. Don't really know. There's no distinction, but there is some connection in different tales with regard. And I write about this as far as in the Great Contest 2. There's a chapter in there as to what was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I share different passages from different books which speculate on and share, even like this one, as to what the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was, or what was the vine, and the different properties it has. And even in the Colburn Bible, it also makes mention of the grape, and that there was a draught that was made from it, a magic potion made from it, and that this is what Adam and Eve drank from, and then they were basically knocked out, and they were spiritually kind of like possessed or raped in some manner. And then it says in the Colburn text that that's how the impure seed was planted into Eve. And so it's a whole different, as far as context and bringing forth the story of Adam and Eve. And I'm just really fascinated by this whole idea. I mean, it seems problematic, tree versus vine. Right.
But, okay, if there was a vine growing up into the tree, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things how that could theoretically work out. But let's say hypothetically it is true that the grapes represent the fruit then in the garden that they ate from. Then it makes other things interesting, like to take a Nazirite vow, for instance, you have to abstain from that.
Right.
You can't have the fruit of the vine. Of course, Yeshua turning the water into wine. That's all. That would open up a lot of interesting implications. And put it that way, if that's the case.
Right. Yeah, you should definitely check it out, and then give consideration.
Well, I mean, so that's the whole reason for doing these shows, is to
of course,
hopefully bring stuff out that neither one of us or one of us haven't thought of before. We can dig deeper and be enriched because of it. This chapter is just full of stuff worth talking about, and I really wish I could do a screen share here to share some of it, but I'll try to just describe things. But this is one of the go-to passages that I will use to insist that Enoch should be considered inspired.
Absolutely.
And why it probably was, it's at various points throughout history and with different cultures, including the Ethiopians, who still consider it to be canonizable to this day.
Right.
But at the very least, it's one of the many reasons why I call it a synchronized, biblically endorsed extra biblical text. Extra biblical only in the sense that it's no longer in between the covers of most Bibles today. But like Leviticus 16, Okay, you have well, let me just go ahead and read it. Let's see. Regarding the Day of Atonement, beginning of verse 7, I think. And he shall take the 2 goats and present them before Yahuwah at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one for Yahuwah and the other lot for Azazel, the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which Yahuwah's lot fell and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make an atonement with him and to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. So, they did this lot thing, casting lots, and depending how it came out, either it came out for Yahuwah or for this goat. And if it came out for the goat, the Israelites were to tie like a scarlet ribbon upon its horn, and they laid their hands on the goat, and they would send it out to Azazel. And if you go to BibleHub.com and in the top menu, select Leviticus 16:10, and just look at the various translations. Now, of course, King James just uses goat and scapegoat, but you'll see other translations that actually use the Hebrew word that is there. New Living uses Azazel, English Standard Version, but the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make atonement over it, and it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel. That's the ESV, and there's a whole bunch of them. That will give you the same thing, the same translation. So, we have a proper noun there, a name there. We miss it in King James. We're just saying scapegoat. But when you realize they're sending this goat to Azazel, like, that's huge, because this is one of the Moedim. Okay, right. Mm-hmm. This is one of the appointed times of Yod He Vav He, and it's a big one, Day of Atonement. And so that ritual makes no sense whatsoever if you throw out the context of Enoch. What is this, chapter 10 that we're reading? Right. Enoch 10. If you throw out Enoch 10, you have no frame of reference for Leviticus 16. None. You have no idea why they're doing this. Well, Enoch 10 tells you that Azazel's buried and bound in a place called Dudiel out in the wilderness somewhere. Now, I've taken creative liberty as to where that location is. I don't think anybody really knows where it is. But for the purpose of my seed project, I've given a location for it. But
where's that?
Well, I've placed it in Iraq, actually. And I actually give coordinates for it in the story, if you're paying attention. So there's a little seed for you. I'm telling people right now. And if people are paying attention to what happens in that episode, you'll see the direct connection here to Leviticus 16 and Enoch 10. But that's like really huge, because there's no precedence for this. And also that these characters are bound in chains and put into a place of torment. Now, we find out later that place is called Tartarus. But this identifies what Peter and Jude understood.
Exactly.
Peter and Jude both reference angels that sin that are bound in chains. And Peter directly refers to the place as Tartarus. I think it's translated like in King James as hell, so you're missing it in the English. But in the Greek, it's Tartarus. So, again, you have no frame of reference. If you throw out the Book of Enoch, you have no clue what Peter and Jude are talking about. You can't say that the angels that sinned that they're referring to is the angels that fell with Satan, because they're still out and about. Satan himself is out and about as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Paul says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of spiritual wickedness in high places. Who are we talking about? We're talking about fallen angels.
Yes.
So that crew is still out and about doing their thing. This group is bound in chains and put in a very specific place called Tartarus. If you throw the Book of Enoch out, then you've nullified and invalidated and you render it completely meaningless. Like, what is Peter? What are Peter and Jude referring to?
Right.
So this is a big chapter for making the case that certainly the people in the Bible treated it with an extremely high level of authoritative, respectable text.
Absolutely, I fully agree. What do you think about? Because I think that Dudael is connected to possibly the 4 angels that are released from the river Euphrates
Yeah.
at the end of days as well.
Another reason why I located it out there.
Yeah.
In fact, there are stories, and I forget the exact location, but I do mention it in Seed, and I bring it out in a much later episode than the ones that I published. But that in real life, there's a dam there at the Euphrates River that the U.S. forces were holding prisoners in some kind of location under this dam or inside this dam or whatever. They had some sort of holding area down there that they're keeping prisoners. And like when you read the accounts, both from the American soldiers as well as the Iraqis, like they're like, kill us. Like we don't want to go down there. Like they know that there's something down there. Like,
yeah, I've heard of that too as well.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the exact name of the place and all that. Maybe people in the chat room can look it up. It's a dam on the Euphrates River where the angels, I mean, like they believe, like, and I guess stuff has happened, Ghostbuster level type stuff, apparently has happened there. So yeah, that's, it says that they are to be buried in the valleys of the earth. Well, Euphrates River Valley. I mean, we do have a relation that there are angels there that are buried there. Again, you have no frame of reference. If you throw Book of Enoch, you have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
And so, but also in this passage, it talks about that the angels, the watchers, they loved their children. These were their beloved ones.
Right.
And part of the severe judgment that the watchers experienced. I mean, Samjaza knew it before they did what they did. He's like, this is a great sin we're about to do here, guys. And sure enough, when they got caught, part 1 of their severe judgment was to watch their own children massacre each other. And like whenever I'm doing a conference, I ask, how many parents are there in the room? And then I said, how many of you parents would love to see your children massacre each other? Anybody? No. Right. A horrible, terrible thing to have to witness. And that was part 1 of their judgment, was to watch it. Now, it also says that they would only live for 500 years. So now, depending on when you think what I call the Genesis 6 experiment took place, the initial incursion of angels landing on Mount Hermon, I date it back to the beginning of when Jared was born, because his name means descended.
Descent, yes. Right.
So, it seems to me that was a notable event that happened around the time of his birth, which prompted the parents to name him that.
Absolutely.
So, if that's the case, that's about 1,200 years before the flood. And if the first generation only living for 500 years from that date, then they are killed off, and the parents are judged, bound, and buried under the sands of the earth for 70 generations. We'll have to come back to that. That happens by about 3000 BC. So that's a good 700 years before the flood happens. You got 700 years to go to the flood. Now, I maintain that in those 500 years, those giants likely copulated also and produced, another generation of giants. There may have been a few generations of giants. But the original angel-human hybrid, the original first angel-human hybrid, they killed each other off in 500 years. That's the Clash of the Titans that the Greeks wrote about. But even in the Greeks, you have the Titans, then you have the Olympians, you have the demigods. There are multiple tiers of different gods. You have in the Sumerians, you have the Anunnaki and the Agigi. Almost every culture has this concept of multiple tiers of lesser giants or lesser gods, many of whom usurp the rulership of the previous generation. So by the time we get to the flood, okay, whether it's 100,000 or 400,000, there's still giants walking around. And it is my contention that the real issue here, and this is where I kind of segue over into Joshua 4:18 and Jubilees 7:24. Meanwhile, elsewhere, they're teaching men to blend species together, and then you have animal-human hybrids being created in the last 120 years leading up to the flood. So it was a chaotic time. You'd have lesser generation giants, which if the first generation were 450 feet tall, 3,000 ells, 300 cubits, the lesser generations from them are still going to be presumably quite big. And you have the blending of species and animal-human hybridization. This world was complete chaos.
Right.
Like
Clash of the Titans.
On steroids. I mean,
right.
It makes you understand why God's like, look, the only choice I have is to wipe this whole place out, save a few,
Exactly.
And start over.
Right.
But that's sobering when you think about Yeshua saying that the days before his return would be like the days of Noah. Like, I don't think most people have painted that picture in their head, just how bad that was. You think it's bad now? It's going to get way worse.
Yeah, most people don't understand. I mean, even, those of us that have studied and looked at and examined the Book of Enoch in great context and the other books, still, the reality of it had to have been even so much more horrific.
Horrific, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to break?
Yeah, hold on, brother. All right, we'll be right back for final segment.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries. To prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
men, that they might take some of them for themselves and raise offspring for their enjoyment. And the angels changed themselves in their likeness into the likeness of their mates, the daughters of men, filling them with the spirit of darkness which they had mixed for them, and with evil. They brought gold, silver, and a gift of copper and iron and metal, and all kinds of things. And they steered the people who had followed them into great troubles by leading them astray with many deceptions. They, the people, became old without having enjoyment. They died not having found truth and without knowing the God of truth. And thus the whole creation became enslaved forever from the foundation of the world until now. The Apocryphon of John. Rob?
Yeah, good stuff. Something I didn't get to finish my thought before we went to break is, we were talking about how bad it's got to get. If people think it's bad now, if we're comparing to the days of Noah, we're not even close.
Right.
It's going to have to get a whole lot worse than it is now, and crazy too. I mean, we're talking like anything you've seen in any Marvel superhero or fantasy or sci-fi,
Exactly.
Horror movie or anything else. I mean, it's going to be everything going crazy everywhere. But when I was in Cape Town, I was blessed to spend Shabbat with a group of people there. And one of the things that came up in the conversation that we had, that I've actually had a lot of conversations with people about around here as well, is that I don't believe we're the generation that's going into the promised land. I think it's our children. If we take the parallel of the account of the Exodus and the wandering in the wilderness and who got to go in, the people that got to go into the promised land were the people who were born into Torah. Not the people that came into it, from paganism.
Right.
The people that were born and raised in it were the people who went into the promised land, with the exception of Joshua and Caleb, of course.
Right.
So that being the case, the vast majority of us, we grew up in what I now refer to as pagan Christianity for the majority of our lives, and it's only been within the last 10 years or so that the vast majority of us have even come into any awareness that, hey, there's this thing called the Old Testament, that, I posted something on my Facebook page. I'm like, here's an experiment for you. Okay, go grab a Bible, open it up such that your left thumb is on the last page of Malachi and your right thumb is on the first page of Matthew. Look how much is in your left hand.
Right.
That's how much you really do need to study and understand if you think you're going to have a clue what's in your right hand.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And for the vast majority of us, like I can speak for myself, we grew up in what we were proud to say. We're New Testament Bible believing Christians. Parenthetically, King James only, Baptists at that. And I say it all the time. That's like going to Barnes and Noble, buying the best-selling novel of all time, skipping 3/4 of the book, and thinking you have a clue who the characters are, what the motivation is, what the plot is, what the heck's going on. No, so it's the in my view, I believe, and numerous other people that I've been talking with seem to share the same view, is that when Christ returns and there's the second Exodus, the greater Exodus that we read about in like Jeremiah, and elsewhere, that the generation that's going to go in is the generation that was raised in it, in my opinion. And so, again, if that's the case, there's still a lot more maturing to go. So I just see a wide variety of areas where there's more time is necessary before things come to an end. Now, people like the Wormwood prophecy, of course, every September 23rd, there's something going to wipe out the earth, or another failed rapture prediction or something. It's like, okay, guys, let's just take a step back. What if our calendar's all jacked up to begin with? And, what if the September timeline's correct? And, there's just so many things to consider. I don't know if you heard the interview that I did with Wendy Carter a while back on the Tetra Scroll.
No, I have not, but I heard you speaking about her, and also the I guess the poster that she did of the timeline.
The timeline.
Yeah.
Now, I love timelines, and she had. I
Right.
was at a conference and I happened to walk by and I saw this timeline chart, and of course that draws my eye immediately. I'm like, oh, I'll check it out. So I started looking at it, and there are things that I had put in some of the timeline charts that I created that I hadn't seen really anywhere else, and until I saw her scroll, and she had some of the same stuff. So that's what initially drew me to her research. Is like, hey, how did you come to that conclusion? Because I came to the same one, same conclusion. I hadn't seen that anywhere. She explained, I'm like, yeah, I came on the same page. But then she started showing me and did some calculations, and I forget exactly what the sync marker was, but it had something to do with the reign of Solomon. And basically it was like, look, secular and religious scholars agree, at least on this point, that whatever the event was happened at such and such a time. So if you use that as your sync point, then you can calculate backwards based on genealogies that are given, all the way back to Adam, and you can calculate forward all the way to Christ and to the modern era. And so doing that calculation backwards and determining the date of Adam, she was saying that the 6,000 years doesn't end to 2106. And going into now, of course, that's going off a Masoretic text, because she was using the same source material I was for her research. All that gets thrown out the window if we go with the Septuagint text, because we're already, it was 5,500 just to Christ.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So we're all, calendar-wise, we're all way off. So I don't think we can make a prediction based on dates like that. I think things got way too convoluted for us to ever figure that out, probably. But we can look at signs and seasons, and based on what we're reading here in the Book of Enoch, what we've talked about in some of the other texts that Zen's brought forth, and looking at Joshua and Jubilees and things of that nature, we're not there yet. It's not that bad yet. It's headed.
Right. No, it's actually, we're still living in
pretty good
blessing.
time.
Yeah, and
by comparison.
incredible stuff. Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So, in some sense, that's discouraging, because look, I want to get out here like everybody else, even though we're all coming back here. Basically what we're saying is we want to see, justice finally prevail, and who is kingdom set up, and an end to evil. We all want that to happen.
Yes.
But I was talking with Rick Hummer just before we got on the air here, and so many people, especially preacher rapture people, every day, every news report, Damascus is going to be destroyed tomorrow. It's the end of the world. Well, oh boy, when Damascus becomes a ruinous heap, that's it.
Exactly.
Everybody's sort of looking through those lenses, and meanwhile, we're like, look, Scripture says we're supposed to occupy until He returns. Like, we're supposed to be doing stuff. We're supposed to be busy.
Yes.
And I know what I've been tasked to do. I'm working on it. I know you do, and other people do. It's like, look, let's get busy.
Exactly.
We've got a job to do. I personally believe I'm going to die of old age before Yeshua returns. That's my personal belief. And if I have the longevity of other people in my family, well, I've got at least 30 more years to go. Maybe more. Barring some kind of horrible situation. So that means I've got a lot of work to do.
Right.
I'm considering myself at the halfway mark. I got a lot more to do. And part of what I feel I'm called to do is to bring this stuff out, everything that we're talking about here, and bring it into the mainstream so people can start to get an understanding of the times that we're living in, so they can be better prepared for what's coming.
Yeah. I personally, I feel be perpetually ready, but I'm not sweating it until really the Antichrist comes on the scene, because I know he comes first before Yeshua comes again, and I know that the beast kingdom and the setup for the world government and the whole Darwinian, Copernican, the heliocentric model, all that is a setup for the extraterrestrials and the ETs, that they created us, and I feel like the fault of the Antichrist will be ET in some manner, and the signs and wonders and all that. So
this may rabbit trail us a bit, but that's what we do.
yeah, right.
How familiar are you with the whole Nasara Jasara deal?
The Nasara,
Nasara Jasara, the global currency reset.
I've heard about it for a very long time now.
Yeah.
It's part of the New Age movement has like vested interest in it, I believe. But other than that, I don't really know much about it because my focus is just on reading the ancient manuscripts. But
Right. Well, it's been brought to my. I had actually never heard of it until just like a year ago. I know. In fact, I was shocked to find out that wow, people have known about this for a long time. It's been around since like the 70s or something at least that people have been talking about, and certainly the New Age has jumped onto it. But what intrigued me the most about it is that, assuming that happens, and the premise behind it is basically a worldwide reset where everything goes back to a gold-based standard, like central banking systems go out the window, the white hats, so to speak, drain the swamp, and the cabal goes down, and then there's this new age that's ushered in that's going to be wonderful, right? And all debts have been canceled, and all this new money is out there, and we quote things like the wealth of the wicked being stored up for the righteous, and this is when it's going to happen. And well, and I was all kind of intrigued and excited about that. Of course, that'd be pretty cool, right? But when I started seeing that it's funded by the Saint Germain Trust,
right, the Ascended Masters,
I'm going, okay, wait a minute, because I'd done a lot of research on this whole Germain character back in the late 90s.
Right.
I was really on that path for a while, trying to understand that. And I don't know how much you've studied on him, but he's an interesting historical character that, through the Renaissance period and whatnot, and even prior to that, he was a pretty prominent figure. You'd read about this guy showing up at some kind of major political function with royalty, there, and the various descriptions we made of him. And then 70 years later, or 60 or 50 years later, or whatever, there'd be another meeting and everybody else is old or dead, and he looks the same as he did.
Right.
Before.
Yeah.
And supposedly his last known sighting was at the signing of the Declaration of Independence here in
I heard that. Yeah.
in the States. And then after that, he kind of went underground and went dark. But now, especially within the New Age movement, and when I was at the Contact in the Desert conference, they were all about these guys, the Ascended Masters. And I'm like, this should make you think, right?
Great White Brotherhood.
Yeah. If they're ascended, that means they're coming from where?
Right. Yeah.
To ascend, you have to come from below.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for a descending master.
Yeah, exactly.
It's coming down from the clouds, right? So that made me kind of. So I started looking into this recently, and there's a lot of talk about this thing, potentially happening in the near future, and they're saying this has been made possible by the Galactic Alliance, and this goes into this whole panspermia idea that you mentioned. That our ancient alien creators are coming back, and they're going to give us all kinds of wonderful stuff.
Yeah, the Golden Age.
Well, the Golden Age, and I started to think about that because if you look back at the whole Anunnaki lore and all that stuff, and Zecharia Sitchin, and I know a lot of his stuff has been basically debunked, but there's been a lot of talk about the Anunnaki harvesting gold from the earth. And it's like, wait a minute, that's an interesting, if that's true, that's an interesting setup thousands of years ago for a payoff, possibly in our day, where we have gold-backed currency.
Right.
And they happen to have the gold in an Ascended Masters trust fund.
Right.
I'm going, geez, I don't know, man. There's maybe, this is what I just put forward, is maybe that's why biblical cosmology made a comeback.
Yes,
a few years
fully agree.
That we need to understand this. And, we're going to get to it here in, a while in Enoch, chapter 72 following, that Enoch's a slam dunk, frankly, for that cosmology. But that cosmology renders evolution null and void. Ancient aliens goes out the window, and all this other stuff gets exposed for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully agree, man. This is the setup, the whole thing. Because even in the protocols, they speak about a day when they're going to collapse everything, and, that they bring forth their king, the Lord, their Lord, and the Antichrist, and that he will head and be given the power, and that they have planned an orchestration of these events where there's going to be this reset, and they plan on offering somewhat this golden age, and it will seem like that to a lot of people, and a lot of people will bend the knee and begin and accept the mark of the beast, and then when he starts to kill the saints and those that don't bow to him because we know that he's Antichrist, well then that's when the world realizes, oh, this guy's not good, if he's
Yeah.
killing people, and just because they won't accept him as God or whatever, and that's fully. I mean, when you see that happening, that we're
Yeah.
near the end of days.
Yeah, for sure. And Enoch is interesting here, the way this narrative is written, because we're in a pre-flood context in Enoch chapter 10, but when it talks about binding the angels for 70 generations, okay, what is a generation? Well, that's debatable. People used to say a generation was 40 years. So hence in 1988, everybody was all excited that Christ is returning in 88. 88 reasons why Christ is returning in 1988, because 88 was 40 years from 48. And everybody was believing that the founding of Israel in 1948 was the beginning of the time clock. And then when 88 came and went, well, okay, maybe it's, Psalm 90 verse 10 defines a generation as 70 years. Okay, so that pushed it up to pretty much our timeline. Right. So
Right.
now everybody's like, well, okay, no, maybe it's 80th by strength. So I'll push it off to, because that's why we had all the tetrad thing, right? A few years ago. Now all that, was it 2018, right? Oh, this is it.
Right.
So now everybody's waiting to 2028. Well,
2028, yeah.
well, maybe 1948 is not anything we should be counting anyway, especially if it's a counterfeit, which, we've talked about before. I certainly believe it is, so we shouldn't be using it as our time clock, at least, not in the sense of what happened in 1948. There's no reason to be calculating that. But let's go with the Psalm 90, verse 10, because it does say, man's days are 70 years, 80th by strength.
Right.
So if we go with, just hypothetically, let's just go with the 70, starting with 70, because that's the baseline. 80th by strength is an exception. So it says that they would be bound for 70 generations. Now, we don't know that a generation was considered the same way back in the pre-flood world. It is interesting that people didn't start having kids until they're about 100 years old. So, maybe. Okay. 70 times 70 is 4,900 years. 4,900 years from 3000 BC, which is the time frame when I believe they were judge bound and buried, takes you to the beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
And so, I look at what happened when we went from horse and buggy and beasts of burden for 5,000 years of recorded history to like everything skyrockets in terms of, greater wisdom, understanding, knowledge, technology, transportation, everything just goes through the roof, and massive increase in pretty much everything that we see the Book of Enoch saying that the watchers taught men to do. Yeah. We see increase of all of that. Beginning around the same time frame and continuing into today. So, I began to speculate about 10 years ago, could it be that we're in the season when the 70 generation judgment has ended for these characters and they're out and about again, being released?
Well, it certainly seems like, whether one accepts the 1948, its connections with the fig tree, it certainly seems like in this generation, there's certainly been a heightened acceleration of technology and capacity and capability, and just knowledge increasing in such a rapid pace. Technology, I mean, look at what our children are growing up with. They are technologically superior to what we were at 5 years old. They grow up knowing how to do all the internet stuff and all the social platforms, and And a lot of what are our generations are still struggling and still dealing, trying to figure it all out. But they grow up with this being second handed. I mean, it's just nothing to them, and they're using all of this technology, and now with the 5G and all the streaming. I mean, it's just it's really it's insane the capacity, technological capacity that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. In Enoch here also, after it says, like, the latter part of Enoch chapter 10, he jumps right ahead to the end times, because we clearly haven't seen, even after in the post-flood world, we don't see the manifestation of what's described there. I mean,
Right.
it sounds like, everybody's going to love God, and plants are growing, and everything's
Right.
wonderful.
Yes.
And, it's this amazing time of blessing, and righteousness, and people offering, it says, and all nations shall offer adoration and praise to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that hasn't happened
Right.
ever. So, clearly,
that seems millennial.
Yeah, clearly the latter half of Enoch 10 has to be pushed off till, end times, millennial time frame.
Yeah, I fully agree. And certainly the latter chapters, when we get towards, the ones at the end of the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, it talks about that generation of the wicked, and compares the two, that the righteous and the wicked that will be alive during that time. And then, when we get into the all the prophecies, the messianic prophecies and chapters on the Son of Man and the elect one and the Ancient of Days, I mean, there's a lot of millennial type prophetic utterances and all of that.
Yeah. One of the criticisms I heard from Dave Murphy, he's on this kick that Yeshua is not legit, and you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do.
He's a big Enoch guy. Interestingly enough, a lot of the Yeshua deniers out there tend to be Enoch people. They like Enoch for flat Earth, or for giants, or for other things.
Right.
I know you.
Christ.
Yeah, just not Christ. And I think Enoch's just a slam dunk also for
absolutely
messianic prophecies like that. But one of his criticism was, okay, where's this Messiah character then in the animal apocalypse? And I hadn't gone back and read it yet. Reread it. I mean, I published it even in one of the appendix.
It's in there too.
Yeah, in my Archon Invasion. But I wanted to get your thought on that, because in the animal apocalypse, what's that, like chapter 89 or something like this, later in the book?
Yeah, the dream vision. Yeah, 89 and on.
I mean, it gives you it basically tells the whole history of Earth from creation until the millennial reign.
Right.
Done up like an Animal Farm allegory.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do you recall a specific mention of animal character in that story that represents Messiah?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you?
Yeah, because I read and covered it all in great detail, and was explaining how, the various allusions connect to the different patriarchs and the different characters. But yeah, most certainly, I do recall, and I'll have to revisit it. But yeah, I believe without a doubt that that is there. And,
yeah, I'd have to go look at it. It's been a while. I've been so busy. It's weird,
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that suck up your whole week.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to engage on these things. I'm like,
Right.
Look, I like Dave as a human being, but when it comes to his understanding of Scripture, of course he was a former hardcore atheist until just a few years ago.
Right.
And now he's all of a sudden a Bible expert. I'm like, dude.
Yeah. Right.
Listen, man. But I'm hoping that to reach him.
Right.
One of these days. That's why I care. That's why I bother to engage. Now, we get a little feisty with each other, certainly.
Yeah. He and I have too. We've done shows together on that, and yeah, we have. We've talked about, and but he is locked into his view, and he's unwilling to listen to or hear anything that I say, and So it's really difficult, in trying to reach him. And it's like both Jaron and I had the same thing, when
Yeah.
the first time I went on Globebusters. We were
Yeah.
supposed to be talking about Flat Earth as key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, and went into a whole, his attack on, and believing that Yahweh is Satan.
Satan.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So little time.
Right. Hey, brother, we appreciate you, man.
Okay, you too, man.
All right. Be blessed, everyone. We'll be on Rob's show next Wednesday. God bless all. Good night.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.